Welcome to today's episode of Out Loud. We are lucky enough to be joined by Avi Ben Mordechai, a clinical therapist who works with children, families, adults, and has plenty of stories to share with us.
Thank
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And can we just say how professional this whole place is looking? Like you went all out. This is really, really next level beyond. And I'm just so excited to be here.
He's also a market agent.
Yeah, let's talk. What do you have in your look at?
I'm prepared.
Guys, look at this.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into this field. So you were sharing with me briefly about how you changed directions, changed paths. Share that with our people.
Fun fact, when we started talking about podcasting, it came up that we were in school together, our early on, way back in special education. So you're a teacher now. You have a whole center. We're actually sitting in the center right now. And so many years ago, my first degree was in special education and psychology. Being a school teacher, after a certain point, I realized I want to become a therapist. And that's a whole story of itself, why I decided to become a therapist. And now I am working with kids and teens and families and couples. And the fun part is that I work with so many different therapy animals, which we can definitely talk about.
Yeah, that's such a unique. I don't think I've ever heard of any other therapist. I'm sure it exists, but I've never heard of any other therapist who caters to our community working with animals. And we're going to get into about that, how that is probably so effective, especially with children, and finds a way to connect with children more. But tell me more about why you changed paths. You said that there's a story.
So there was a very interesting story. I remember I taught grades second all the way through high school. And one time I was walking around to check the spelling test because that's what teachers do. We give a spelling test. And this is how we're taught. If they don't pass, what do you tell them? Get it signed by your parents and bring it in. Let's see. So I remember telling one boy, said that he didn't do well. And I said to him, please get it signed by your parents. The next day, I walk around the classroom checking all the homework and if they signed. And I said, did you sign your test? And he said, no. I said, why didn't you sign your test? He said, well, because I didn't want my dad to hang me. And I said, what? Hang you? I'm like, come on. What are you talking about?
Got goosebumps.
I said, what do you mean hang you? He's like, yeah, he would hang me if he would see that I would fail. I'm like, okay, so this got interesting. This is a little kid. I said, how would he hang you? Give me a step by step. How would he hang you? And he's saying, well, he would tell me to wear a sweater and I would wear the sweater with the hoodie and he would put me on a hook. And depending on how long, how bad my situation was, that's how long I would have to. I noticed you took a deep breath just now.
Jeez.
All right. So he said, depending on how, what I did was wrong, that's how long I would have to hang for. And I said, come on, do you really think he's going to do it? He's like, yeah, he did it to my sister yesterday. Yeah, and she was there for 40 minutes because of what she did. And I said, whoa, this is
Not prepared for this.
I said, whoa, this is beyond what I can handle. I noticed some tears are coming up for you, right? We'll definitely get into that.
Yes.
So I noticed that I'm like, this is way too much. I can't handle this. I'm not equipped. I don't have the tools. I never learned how to deal with something like this in school, for special education. Our main focus was how to teach math and put together a lesson plan and reading and all these different other academic skills, nothing to do with emotions or feelings. And I brought him to the principal's office and I said, look, this situation came up. I really don't know what to do here. You have to handle this. And she took it from there. But then this was one of the biggest wake-up calls where I said, I really want to connect with people beyond the classroom in terms of what's going on in their life. And I want to know how to figure out ways to kind of get them where they need to be and also for them to be advocates for themselves. So, and that's where the whole journey started. And that's just this to scratch the surface. But truly, every good therapist, I think, will tell you their career really started from childhood, when they were kids. I was the guy who, if my friends, something was going on with my friends and they needed to talk to somebody, I was that guy. Or even with my family, if something was going on, we were talking about it and I was there just listening, trying to understand, not necessarily coming up with solutions, but just holding space, just being there, And eventually, as I continue to progress and learn, like, there's actually a whole field where I can do this. I just jumped on it and I never looked back. And this is, I always say this is not a job for me. This is my life. I do this from morning all the way to late at night. And this is, they say, if you love what you do, you won't work a day. You won't work a day in your life. I say, if you love what you do, you will work harder than anybody else.
say that all the
You know, so, and by the way, if you're not following her on Instagram and all over social media, this is like a shameless plug, but you really, I can see the quality of work that you're putting in. And even like your whole center here, which you have to give everybody a tour if you haven't seen it yet. I'm serious. I can see quality work. So, just like by walking in here and seeing your Instagram and seeing your feed, it's really, really incredible, especially for our community to have something like this. I'm so happy to be here today, truly.
Thank you so much, guys. I didn't plan to say that. I promise you. But I will say something that really clicked with me right now is I feel like that's something that educators struggle with is the back and forth between connecting with kids on an emotional level and a performance level, an academic performance level. As teachers, even here, seeing children privately, I'm obligated to produce certain results academically, but then there's sometimes where I just want to stop all that and just connect with the child. And, those grades don't matter. You just want to really connect and bond with the child. I had one teacher my entire life who I probably felt like did that for me. And that was a very pivotal moment, I feel like, for me. And I feel like every child deserves that educator who cares more to connect with them than the test grade.
One of the things you were just talking about was very, very important, which is safety first before academics. Yes, academics is very important. We need to know how to read and math in order to navigate the world, right? But if a child is dysregulated, if they're not safe, we cannot go to step two if step one is chaotic, right? So that's really where my role is, making sure the kid is in a safe place, right? Or even a teen, or even a spouse. This is kind of where therapy comes in oftentimes when I'll speak to principals or teachers to try to understand, for that to help them understand that there's so much chaos that's going on in this child's life. Yes, if they're failing a test, we have to figure out another plan for the teacher to be able to work with them. Because if we're just looking at a test score and saying, he's a bad boy, or he needs to be in a different place, we have to figure out, one second, what's their story. Let's understand this first. That's really the starting point, and then from there, we can help them academically.
Do you feel like in your practice you see that parents are, what's the right word, a cooperative or compliant part of that? Or do you feel like there's some resistance? Like, I feel like therapists or educators could do 90% of the work, but then sometimes you feel like it's 50 steps backwards when they go home.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Part of my role as a therapist, not a school therapist, because a school therapist is all focused on things related to the child in school. My role is to oftentimes empower parents to advocate for their child, because oftentimes what you see is, unfortunately, here's the thing. I love teachers. I was a teacher to the point where it's so interesting. I just got to say, side note, teachers are one of the most underappreciated jobs because people don't recognize how much work goes into it. I have so much respect for teachers. What's interesting is, after a full day of work, you come back home and you still work,
Yep.
and to your own kids. One memory that I want to share, interestingly, when I went to pick up my wife on the day of my wedding, she lived in Brooklyn. I was in Queens. So it was like a good 45-minute drive. I remember filling out the report cards on my limo to go pick her up because they were due the next day.
Lines, yep.
Exactly. So they were due the next day. And this is the life of a teacher. On my special day, I made sure to know that I have all my report cards are due by the next day. And that's what I did. And that's the life of a teacher. You do it with your kids around, you do it on your days off, and you just try to juggle all of that. So I remember doing something like that. So I have a lot of respect for teachers. It's such an incredible opportunity to be able to shape the lives of the next generation. With that said, unfortunately, and this is a conversation I have with many principals, we're all humans. even therapists sometimes, even doctors, even lawyers and accountants and people with very prestigious titles, right? In the end of the day, we're all humans. In the end of the day, we all have that little child inside of us that maybe went through some type of trauma, that maybe had a difficulty, which was not resolved. And because of that, sometimes it shows up in the classroom. Oftentimes, unfortunately, I hear from kids, I'm very anxious to go to school. Why are you anxious? Oh, because my teacher is going to yell at me. Now, do I blame the teacher? No, because maybe this teacher is burnt out. And by the way, teachers have one of the highest burnout rates because they think about it. You have 20, 25 kids in your class, and you have to be an educator for each one, a therapist for each one, almost like a parent for each one, a nurse for each one. Everyone has their own personality and learning style, and you have to really learn how to juggle all of that. How do you not become insane? You're like,
And then you come home and you have to be a teacher for your kids, a therapist for your kids, a chef for your kids, and a parent for your kids.
facts. So exactly. So this is a very, very difficult job. It's not for the light of heart at all. It's not. So, and sometimes you slip up. As a teacher, you slip up and you can mess up. And the kid, the thing is, why it can become so dangerous is because in their developmental stage, kids don't recognize this. They don't recognize, oh, maybe she had a bad day. Maybe something happened with her spouse, or maybe, one of her kids gave her a hard time. They don't think about this. They think that they are bad. And because they're in that developmental stage, their brain is completely open for information. So if a teacher puts in accidentally, it might be a slip up, like, you know, you idiot, you stupid, you're not smart. Unfortunately, but it does happen, right? And or they're rough with them. They don't give them the patience or time. In their mind, they make them go like, I'm not good enough. Something must be wrong with me. I must be broken, right? And from that time, it's my opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to be able to, number one, understand what's going on in their life, talk to the principals, talk to the teachers to try to figure out a better plan that we can do. Again, I'm a therapist, so people will come to me when there's a problem, right? So these are the cases that I see. And school refusal is a very, very popular thing that's going on.
Wow.
Many families, this is not something that is discussed out there, but many kids are refusing to go to school because of the immense amount of anxiety that they're facing. And a lot of times I get this question from parents, but like my kid is so young, they're so small. Like, how can they be dealing with depression or anxiety, or difficulties with separation from parents or difficulties with making friends? This absolutely does exist. So when I break this down with them and try to, number one, normalize, parents and kids want to just know I'm normal, I'm okay, I'm human, right? That's the most important piece. Then oftentimes I'll share even with them my own journey, right? Not to make it about myself, but to just connect and normalize with them, like, hey, we're all just figuring this out. Does that make
I'm
sense?
so glad you mentioned the word anxiety because I wanted to ask you about that. I feel like the word anxiety in our culture tends to be misused, overused, under recognized. It's just misused. So I feel like nervousness, how do we differentiate between typical average child nervousness, which I think is normal to some extent, versus anxiety where we need to seek intervention of some sort?
Yeah, very good point. So interesting. Before today's podcast, right? I said to you when we were talking, we were on the phone, like, okay, so like, I'm gonna go to this new place, to this studio. Like, what's it gonna be like? How is it gonna all happen, right? So, was it nervousness? Was it anxiety? Like that feeling that came up, right? But that was my defense mechanism, that of saying like, hey, are you going into a safe place? Now, if my anxiety would kick in and I'll say, oh, I'm too anxious to talk on camera, or to discuss certain topics. I can't do this. I have to stay home. That's when anxiety affected my activities of daily living. Because I was able to have a feeling inside my body, like, oh, what's that going to be like? But you know what? I'm going to go through anyways. I'm going to see I'm going to see what the experience is going to be like. I might flop this whole podcast and mess up, but I also might say something insightful and might help somebody.
So basically, you differentiate it by when a child or even an adult is able to regulate themselves through their nervousness or anxiety versus when they can't, when they shut down and they can't function.
Right. Anxiety is very much necessary. we need to have anxiety. Anxiety is truly what protects us,
Right.
right? The challenge here is knowing how to balance the anxiety piece, right? Because too much makes us want to stay home and not leave the house. Too little makes us reckless and impulsive. So we need that proper balance to keep us safe.
Funny story. I took my son to the urgent care like a month ago, and I started noticing a pattern. I'm glad you brought up the whole school anxiety thing. So I started noticing a pattern. He was calling me from the nurse's office every Tuesday that he wasn't feeling well. It was the asthma, it was the stomach, it was this, it was that. So every Tuesday I'd have to pick him up. On the third Tuesday, I was like, hold on. First of all, I'm getting sick of picking you up. Second of all, it's on Tuesdays. What's on Tuesdays? And I picked him up and I asked him, what's on Tuesdays? He said, I have a double period of a specific class. And I was like, okay, ding, ding, ding. That's the issue. Because he would come home and he's totally fine. I had to take him to the urgent care, to pediatricians. It was like, the inhaler's not working. He's still not breathing right. The nurses worry. They looked at him. They're like, no, lungs are clear. Everything's fine. He shouldn't be on an inhaler right now. So on the last visit to the urgent care, when he happened to walk out of the room, I mentioned to the physician, I said, it's just, I need a school note. I know you said nothing is wrong with him. I need a school note because he's just nervous to go back to school. So I just need a note from me that he was seen. Everything's fine. He's good to re-enter school because I'm going to drive him back to school. And the first thing she did, I don't know how to react to this. The first thing she did was she directed me to a sign on the wall that said mental health services. So for me, that was like a little bit extreme because I feel like it's okay for children to be anxious or nervous. And, the same way we as adults have to learn how to navigate with different type of personalities, children have to learn how to deal with certain personalities and teachers too. Do you feel like that was warranted, or do you feel like, is that something typical where you get maybe too much of an extreme response, or was that an extreme response?
Here's the thing. First of all, thanks for sharing that story, because that felt so real. Taking off the hat of an educator and putting on the hat of mom.
Yeah.
And he showed up there as mom trying to say, like, what can I do to help my kid? With certain cases, we want to just assess. That's where I say that the first stage is just normalize. Let's just figure this out. Even if, let's say, you have a kid who's 10 years old and still wetting the bed, right? Oftentimes the immediate response is, what do you mean? 10 years old? Why are you still wetting the bed? But when you just actually tell kids, by the way, a bunch of kids in your school also do this, right? When you normalize this experience for them and say, like, we'll figure this out, right? Immediately that pressure is taken off. So even for, let's say, your son, and good job, I gotta give you credit for almost like investigating there, like, what's going on here? What's this pattern? Oftentimes, and again, no fault to parents because they also have a lot on their plate, but oftentimes parents will miss these marks. Part of my role working with families is actually breaking down their step by step from the moment the kids' eyes wake up in the morning to the moment they're in bed, closing their eyes, going to bed. I look at every single area and say, okay, let me try, as an investigator, let me try to see where are the cracks in this child's life. What happens? That's exactly what you did. You started to see, okay, every Tuesday, what's going on here? Let me investigate. As parents, very gently, very lightly, we have to try to ask questions to try to figure out what is the bigger picture, what's going on here. And it could be he's having a great time throughout the whole day, but this one teacher, and this is often what I hear, this one teacher, and sometimes it could be a teacher that's been in practice for, 25 plus years. They're already, at the end of their career, or it could be someone who's just starting off new. There could be so many different things, In the end of the day, teachers are humans too, so they don't do this from a bad place, but a lot of the times they don't recognize, how, when the kid goes home, what impact it has. So this is something, part of my role is to have this human to human conversation with teachers. And oftentimes you see teachers taking more classes or maybe even their own therapy to try to understand what comes up from them. Therapists should also be in their own therapy. It's called, we call it supervision. And the reason for that is because I'm damn human. What if a client comes to me, starts telling me a certain scenario, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my parents did the same thing. Yeah, my wife just did the same thing.
I was actually going to ask you, does this not weigh on you? Like all these stories, the first story you shared weighed on me. I can't imagine. How do you go home and like,
Right. This is with my own supervision, with my own therapy, making sure when I'm working with someone, I'm working from a clear vessel. I can't have my stuff come up and affect my response to them. Right. So I'll give you an example, like I was telling you before, where this is a very, very delicate position to be in. And oftentimes I got to say, there are some amazing teachers out there. And oftentimes people will say, because of that one teacher that I had in this class, I am who I am today.
yeah, I have that.
You want to share to tell us?
I had a sixth grade teacher who made me like reading for the first time. I was always a very fluent reader, but I don't know if I didn't care to understand or comprehend what I was reading. But this one teacher made me like reading because we read it as a class. It wasn't just an assignment. It wasn't just something she's going to grade and see if you're right or wrong. We read it as a class. I don't know if everybody in the class had that same positive experience, but for me, I retained the most academically and literacy probably just from her class alone. And I wasn't like the teacher's pet or anything like that. It was just an enjoyable process. And also, midway into the year, that teacher really started to connect. I guess she saw something in me and she really started to connect. So she would ask me, she knew I came to school early every day. She would ask me, do you want to come and assist me set up in the classroom and things like that. So mid-year I kind of felt like I have that reason to go to school. I'm not just getting to school early just because I have to because of the bus, but I'm excited to go to school. I can't wait to help this teacher. I can't wait to have a purpose. So that was, I think, the first time that I felt really seen by a teacher. And I think every kid, it's impossible to have that every year with every teacher. It's really impossible, but I think every kid deserves that experience at least once in their life.
What got you into teaching?
What got me into teaching? As a kid, I was always the girl who lined up her dolls around the perimeter of the carpet and taught. Um, I'm the first daughter, first granddaughter, first cousin, like first everything in the family. So it was very much embedded in my head that you are the example. You must be an example. You must lead. And then my siblings were born. My siblings are triplets. And I got to watch all these. At that time, they were just given early intervention. I know early intervention is like it's a hard process to get approved now, but at that time, it was a little bit more lenient. So I got to watch all these therapists walk in and work with them. And I got to sit front row and ask questions. These therapists were very gracious enough to entertain a then 11 or 12-year-old me with all my annoying questions. And I think that's how it began.
Wow. It's so interesting you say that because I can see how it translates many years later in just the style and what you do. Like you were giving that story about the dolls.
Yeah.
Like it's very like being thorough and good at what you do is very. It seems like it's very important for you.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't have a choice with the way I was.
Tell us about like performance anxiety. I'm curious, like if that was a thing for you. Like you were the firstborn, the first grandchild. It's like the first one of everything. Did that put pressure on you to like perform and do well because all eyes on you?
Yeah, but I feel like I felt a little bit honored by it. Ironically, like my older son, he feels this burden every time I mention you're the oldest. You have to set an example, you have to be the responsible one, and he's all like he doesn't like it. Maybe he will appreciate it later, but I don't remember having that. I think maybe the way it was worded to me, maybe I need to do a better job with wording it with my son, but it felt very much like an honor and a privilege to be the oldest. And I think I took on that role well. I don't know.
Let's quote Spider-Man: "With great power comes great responsibility." Right? So
Yeah.
I hear that it can definitely put on you give you an opportunity to express your ability to do well, but also for some, like your son, for example, it puts on a little bit of pressure for him.
Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like I feel this is what I tell him. I don't know how truthful it is, but I tell him that God picks and chooses who the oldest should be. He picked you specifically out of your siblings because he knows it's within your abilities to lead, to be that exemplary person, or to have that kindness or graciousness to put aside your ego and help your little siblings. So I don't know. I feel like God chooses who should do that role and who shouldn't.
It sounds very much like a mom thing to say. So I can see why you would say that. What I would say actually, like if this is something that would come up in therapy, where a child would say, it's too much pressure for me. And then a parent would say, you're that whole beautifully worded speech she said, um, which is amazing. I would say, let's take it a step further and understand his experience. So empathy would be number one. Validation, like, that must be a lot for you. Like what is that like for you? Knowing that you are the firstborn, and they're looking at you, and they're looking at your behaviors, and it seems like you're an example for everybody. What's that like for you, right? When we are telling him all these incredible words, a lot of the time it could be also unconsciously. It boosts his ego, don't get me wrong, but unconsciously it can also be invalidating for him, thinking like, oh, she just doesn't get me, right? But if we look at it from an empathy standpoint and say like, okay, let me jump into your world and get into your shoes. What's that like for you to be able to have to have this like performance pressure, basically.
Right.
And that's when he sees that you're on the same frequency with him. He's like, oh, she gets me, and immediately that defense that he puts up there, he's disarmed.
You're so good at identifying things because I know this in myself. This is like a parenting session right here. I know this in myself. I know I really lack in that area, sympathizing with my kids or empathizing. I'm very much like, toughen up. Let's go. Talk, like be a little bit up for the challenge.
How deep do you want to go? Because what I was gonna say is, you could definitely delete this, post. But was there anybody ever for you who was able to validate you and empathize with you and give you the space just to hold your feelings? Was that without giving you that like go, 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 go athlete mentality?
This episode is sponsored by Oakland Gardens Eye Care. Come with me as I take my kids to the eye doctor. Josh has been struggling with recurrent styes, which haven't been improving with all the home remedies. You all know how much I love a home remedy, but I also know when it's time to seek professional advice. Dr. Christina Haidatov and her staff welcomed us to their beautiful office and started the eye exams. She has all these updated machines to ensure an optimal experience. The Maestro takes retinal photos and checks for glaucoma risks, the visual field checks peripheral vision, and the autorefractor gets a baseline of prescription. All good on those fronts and no glasses needed. But she did say he has blepharitis. Blepharitis is a common condition in kids that causes irritation and crusting on the lash line and can lead to styes. She recommended daily warm compresses on the eyes to loosen the oils and a natural lid cleansing product with tea tree oil. Dr. Christina Haidatov was so patient and took her time to explain care instructions to Josh as well. If you're ever in need of an eye doctor for yourself or loved ones, this is the place to go. Thank you, Oakland Gardens Eye Care, for taking care of our ocular needs.
All right, she needs some water, so you know what that means, right?
No, because, well, first of all, I think our parents came here with that immigrant Soviet style of parenting. Like, first of all, they had so many challenges to deal with. They didn't have time to empathize for our little kid challenges. And I totally get that. I can't imagine right now uprooting my life and moving somewhere else. But I don't know. I think I did a lot of what's the right word? Self-sympathizing. Like I had to learn to sympathize for myself because I didn't have anyone to do that for me. I also felt like we're not like allowed to complain about feelings.
Wow. This is so powerful what you just said. You've resonated with like millions of people watching this. Truly.
That's not even the deep stuff.
Because you're absolutely right. And I like the fact that you brought up your parents, because our parents were immigrants. When they came here, they were in survival mode.
Right.
They had no milk, they had no work. It was very difficult for them to find a job, put money, get money and put food on the table. And they didn't have time to show empathy and validation and all these fancy therapy words. In that time, it was all about survival.
Right.
You have a roof over your head, you have clothing on your back, you have food in your belly. We had a good day today. Now, where we are the first generation here, we're able to now start to thrive and give our kids the ability to thrive in ways we couldn't.
Right.
So this is the whole game changer. Now, it's so incredible to watch parents being open-minded to mental health. I saw a video. It's an interesting video. They said, why is it that everyone's house, like millennials' houses now, are like so like aesthetically pleasing and so like picture perfect? And then they showed a snapshot of like the childhood houses exactly and what it was like. And now this is like a trauma response as to why this is the way it is now.
We all have the
Yeah.
Persian rugs with the crazy pattern, and now we want minimal
Look at
white.
this. Look at this.
And that's it.
It's funny because I think I have the same one in my office. Isn't that wild? How
Yeah.
we're all kind of programmed in this type of way. So none of this is random. So the fact that we can create a space to learn and understand, that's where change happens.
It feels like everybody has some sort of inner trauma.
Mm.
Like growing up, I used to think it was select people who went through very traumatic things. But lately, I feel like everyone is dealing with some sort of inner struggle, inner trauma. It doesn't matter how severe, the severity doesn't matter, but everyone has that something inside. No one had that like perfect built in, I don't know.
It's an interesting point you're making. There's a saying, everyone has a chapter they don't read out loud, right? So I noticed I said that and you look
I
at
see what you did there.
which also really means is that everyone has something that went on in their life. But like you can have the same situation happen to two people, but they both responded very differently. How does that happen? Childhood. It's all about how your childhood was shaping you, your foundation. If you were in a safe, healthy environment and had healthy parents who were able to be there for you emotionally and guided you when you were having a hard time, that's the difference.
What's the most frequent challenge you see? Is it anxiety working with kids?
So certain symptoms like anxiety, depression, trauma work, OCD, PTSD, family relationships, difficulties communicating with siblings or even making friends. School refusal is a big one. Just overall figuring out certain routines and structures of the home. The family is really a system, and trying to understand what are the cracks and being able to kind of put that together with the family. If I'm working with couples, also understanding their love languages, the way they bond, the way, if they're having a fight, how do they come back and connect together? And a lot of it also has to do with their attachment style, the way they were brought up when they were much younger. The way they're responding, let's say, to their spouse is because what happened to them when they were growing up. And this shows up in a very big way. Just because somebody is older now doesn't mean that little kid inside is fully healed.
Right. You brought up attachment style. Ugh, we were talking about it earlier. Attachment style is probably it's what like triggered a lot of healing, a lot of self-reflection, all that in me. And I wonder, you just answer that, I guess. That probably is solely responsible for how children or adults navigate throughout their adult relationships. It's solely, if you guys don't know it, look it up. The Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby, I think, attachment theory style. So that will probably help you understand a lot about yourself.
So yeah, if like for example, your parent was not there or didn't show much interest, which was in an avoidant type of person, attachment style, right? In the kid's mind, they're probably thinking, "Oh, I must not be good enough. Like I'm unlovable. Like no one is gonna love me." And that's in the modern terms, you hear like daddy issues, right? But where does that really come from? That comes from a place of really badly wanting validation. Or let's say an anxious attachment where you're seeing the world from a very scary place and now we're talking about adult life. If you go for the interview, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to screw this up. They're never going to want to take me. Why would they want to hire me? I'm such a failure, right? Where's that coming from? It's not random. Nothing we do is random. When we go to therapy, this is us trying to understand the story of our life. Why are we the way we are?
I think if you can figure that much out, you can probably change the trajectory of your decision making. I don't think you can change your feelings because your feelings kind of just come, but how you self-talk, how you self-heal, how you cope, how you navigate through relationships and all of that.
Yeah.
I want to talk specifically about animal therapy. Tell me, first of all, is there any science to back up how animals help children cope, regulate, open up? What effect do animals have on a child's brain or even an adult's brain?
Sure. Animal assisted therapy. For example, a dog that could be on your lap or on the rug while you're reading in circle time. And the child is touching the animal, the sensory stimulation that's going on, even without the therapist there. Like I don't even have to be involved. I'm just there facilitating all of that. Them just touching the animal creates such a calming effect. Like even right now, if you were to take a stuffy, like a bear or anything, and just go like this, right? That in itself is very common, right? Like, for example, they do this for dementia patients in nursing homes and hospitals. They can have animals there. Well, one of the things that I do is also go to the psych wards, the hospitals, the nursing homes, the assisted livings, doing animal therapy. But when I'm not there, they also need that sensory stimulation. So for dementia patients, they have an actual cat that purrs, that picks up her paw, and you feel the purr, has very soft fur. And as the patient touches them, they immediately relax. Their negative behaviors that usually come up, like aggressive behaviors, or especially if someone's in a nursing home, like a fall risk, so they want to get up and start making a big scene, this decreases these negative behaviors. I like to say this. I'm a therapist first, but I'm a therapist with a toolbox. Obviously, every single session is different depending on what the client needs. It's always about what they need. And I have a lot of different types of animals to be able to help them with their specific challenge. You were talking about this early on. I never thought I would do something like this at this capacity. There are therapists who have a dog or a horse or, one or two of animals, but not at this capacity. And this is really how it grew when I would visit nursing homes or hospitals. And I would come with, at that time, I only had one dog. And I would visit a patient that would say, I really miss my cat. I love this dog. I really miss my cat. Leaving, I'm like, should be to get a cat. Or one patient would say, I really miss my bird. I should be able to get a bird. And slowly, 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 you kind of grew into this thing. And then I had a client who said, well, I bet you would never get a scorpion. I'm like, that's interesting.
So tell us about what animals you have.
So I have a whole bunch of animals. And then we can also talk about, what every single animal represents therapeutically. I'm not a guy with a bunch of animals who it's like a zoo. Every single animal has a therapeutic background. I brought up a scorpion, for example. Like, how the heck can a scorpion be used in therapy, right? If you think about anxiety, right? What is it? Why are people so afraid of a scorpion?
It can sting you.
It can sting you, right? Now, ask yourself, why does scorpion sting? Like, if I put my hand in there, why would it sting me?
To protect itself.
Bingo. We do the same thing. We get angry. Oftentimes, anger is just a mask for pain and feelings. One of the ways scorpions could be used in therapy, just like they respond from fear that, oh, this person is going to attack me, they put their hand in, I better sting. We do the same thing. If someone says something to us and we get defensive, like I said before, our body is built to protect us. The firefighter shows up and says like, hey, don't talk to her like that, or don't talk to him like that. And what does that look like? We lash out in anger.
That's probably I feel like that's such a marital issue, especially in the first few years, the ego, the pride, and you want to defend yourself, and you start to be on the offensive instead of thinking about the unit of a marriage.
Facts. You said it perfectly. That's exactly what it is. Really, you're in this new relationship and you're thinking, I need to protect myself. But when you go to therapy, you recognize it's interesting. Why did I feel the need to protect myself? What was coming up for me? And when you're able to kind of dig deeper and try to understand, is it childhood stuff? Is it because I didn't want to be misunderstood? And that's where you're able to now recreate a healthier relationship when you understand what's coming up for you. So every single animal represents, like, for example, a snake. I have 3 different types of snakes, right? How can snakes be therapeutic? They're so sensitive.
Your wife handle you.
That's a whole other story, which I'll share. The snakes that I have, you might think, how are snakes therapeutic? If you think about what do snakes do every single month, they shed. That's also what we do in therapy. We shed the baggage that we're carrying for years. It's really used as a metaphor. But also at the same time, while I'm sitting with a client and they have, a huge snake wrapped around their hand and then just looking at it, part of mindfulness also, they're able to really focus and they're able to look at the snake and the sensory stimulation that they're feeling. It gives me an in their mind. It takes away that that heaviness that therapy can sometimes bring. The judgment, the fear, is this person gonna, think something bad about me? It creates a certain softness within the space. Or like having a dog or a cat or birds. Birds, we have 5 different parrots, and every single one, number one, they build a relationship with the clients, but also at the same time, parrots are all about boundaries. Just because you get excited and you want to go touch a parrot, and these are exotic birds, you can't just stick your hand into the cage because they'll nip you, they'll hurt you, right? Boundaries. They're letting you know, hey, we're gonna do this on my terms. You open the door, I'm gonna come out, and then when I'm ready, I'll come on your hand. You
So if
cannot.
you had to work with a kid about impulse control or something like that, you would choose a pet.
Impulse control, I would use a cat.
Oh,
Because children who has that struggle with impulse control, they see the cute cat. Oh, come over here right now. Sit. I told you sit. What's going on? Why aren't you listening to me?
and they'll scratch.
Right? So with cats, you got to work on patience. You got to wait for the cat to come to you. I know you want the cat to come right now, but we're going to take a deep breath, or we're just going to watch the cat.
That's so intriguing. You choose the animals based on the child's needs. Wow.
100%. When we talk about safety, with like for example, whether it's sexual abuse or trauma, we'll use my tortoise. Her name is Diana, and we'll talk about safety. Like, what does a turtle have on its body to keep themselves safe?
Oh yeah.
A shell. What do you have in your life that keeps you safe? Or for example, even in my tarantula, a lot of these animals are a lot of these animals are also used to help people with their fears and phobias. So a lot of times people have fear of dogs or cats or even tarantulas or even cockroaches. That's a whole other thing which we can talk about. Cockroaches, if you think about it, when you think of a cockroach, like what do you I see your eyes are opening. It's disgusting, right? We're conditioned to think they're so disgusting, right? But if you actually ever stopped for a moment and looked at a cockroach and how precise their body shape is and what they look like, and actually, we very much need cockroaches in the world in order for the world to keep running the way it's running. They eat all like dead matter, for example, right? So this way, it keeps the environment going. We actually need it. And when we think there's something called catsaritophobia, the fear of cockroaches, many people have this, right? How do we know it's a problem if it affects your activities of daily living? If it's in your house and you have to run out, which happens to many, it's a problem that should be treated. So we were going back to what we were saying about the tarantula. If you think about spiders, right? What do? They build a nest, they build a web, the rain comes, breaks that web. What do?
Build it up again.
Build it up again. That's how we build resilience. We mess up, we fail that test. Okay, we can study, we can try again, and we could succeed. And if you think about the world, this is what happens to us every single day. We try, we mess up. We try, we mess up. We fail, and then we eventually succeed, and we make it through.
That's such a phenomenal. I would never think of this, that each animal has a specific lesson or a specific targeted goal for sure. Wow, that's incredible. I would never think of that. Can you share a moment that deeply changed you or touched you as a therapist? I know you have confidentiality laws and stuff like that, but while being discreet, share something that moved you.
um, it's really hard to say that one thing that just moved me. But I was recently do I took a little break from social media for some time, working on some different projects. And I saw a video and I said, "Oh, I really would love to make a video like this." Like me talking to my, 65-year-old self. It was actually on my birthday when I was thinking about this. Like if me at this age would be able to talk to my 65-year-old self, like what would that conversation look like?
Mm.
And a part of my brain said, as a 65-year-old man, one of the biggest gifts that I was given was being able to be a part of people's story.
Right.
Seeing the ups, the down, the chaos, the crazy days, the happy days, the makeup days, the fighting days, all of that. And it's truly, this is a privilege. I am so privileged to be able to be a part of people's lives in this way and truly be inspired. And I'm not saying this, for clickbait because it sounds good, but genuinely seeing people going through so much struggles, so much pain, and nobody sees it. Like, I can't talk to my wife about the stuff that I say. I can't talk to anyone. This is such a personal thing. Like, you brought up confidentiality. There is no one on this earth that knows what goes on between myself and my clients. Nobody. It's just me and them. And only I get to witness this. And the crazy part about this is I can't share this with anybody. So in a way, it's like sometimes I wish you could just like share certain things, but you can't. And that's the beauty of it. It's just for me. This is my journey to be able to experience such growth. And in all honesty, my clients empower me. The fact that they put themselves out there every single day and they're grinding and they're trying and they're failing and they're messing up and they're trying again.
Avi Ben Mordechai, you're a clinical therapist and extremely knowledgeable in all things children, family dynamics, and therapy. Thank you so much for being here. This is amazing.
And that's a wrap.